are working in practice. If confirmed, Mr. Haynes, what are a few concrete things you would build or change inside INA to sharpen ITA's China work? For example, specific analytic products, priority sectors, or support for trade agreement enforcement?
Thank you, Senator. The most current concrete example I can provide you, again, is our current work on mapping critical mineral supply chains. I mean, this is the main trade issue in the U.S.-China trading relationship, and one that the President and Secretary Lutnick are laser focused on solving. Currently, we are providing mapping information for all 54 minerals. We're really focusing on the processing and refining side of the equation, given that in that sense, China dominates the supply chains there. And we're going to continue to work with the White House-led investment committee to ensure that we not only understand those supply chains, but are able to secure them, and thus secure a number of different sectors that are downstream that require these critical components. So if confirmed, that would be one of my main focuses, is to continue that work and help to secure those supply chains.
Well, since your point of emphasis is on critical minerals, maybe you could speak to this. I've advocated for a number of years running that our country develop a national economic security strategy. This would be an analog to our national defense strategy. It's a subset of an economic security strategy would be a strategy for critical mineral resilience and sourcing on an ongoing basis. Might INA play a role in development of a written strategy subject to scrutiny, but ultimately some measure of consensus around what the policy is, so that we could develop a policy that would endure beyond this administration, just as we do through a national defense strategy?
Yes, sir, Senator. I would imagine that any strategy like that would probably be White House-led, like a national security strategy, national defense strategy. And if something like that were to come into existence, I would imagine that we would absolutely be asked to provide support in developing that. And if it does come to fruition, and I'm confirmed, would be delighted to do so.
Well, great. Well, I hope we'll have an opportunity to work together on that broader matter, which I agree would have to come from the White House. I know they're listening, so I thought I'd bring it up. But I expect that I will be supporting your nomination, and thank you for answering my questions. Chairman?
Senator Rosen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses here for taking us to space, and a little bit more, we'll say Nevada-specific, because we have a proud graduate of University of Nevada, Rena, here, who knows lots about critical minerals in our state and tourism in our state. And I fully support working on a national strategy, because Nevada, of course, has some of the largest critical mineral deposits in the country. And so we are very mineral rich, as you know, and thank you for being here. But I'm going to focus a little bit on tourism. I'm going to bring us down to earth and ask about my travel and tourism work and some of the bills that we've had. Because in 2023, I had a bipartisan bill, the Omnibus Travel and Tourism Act, was signed into law, and that bill created a position of Assistant Secretary of Travel and Tourism at the Department of Commerce. The new position is the first tourism dedicated assistant secretary in the United States, and among other matters is responsible for setting annual visitation goals, creating whole-of-government strategies to ensure that visitation goals are met, establishing interagency coordinations to support U.S. tourism, which I would argue is in the top economic driver of every state in our great nation. This new office will also play an essential role to reducing barriers to travel and leveraging new technologies to make travel safer and more efficient. However, despite the critical importance of this role, especially as the tourism industry continues to face significant challenges amid global uncertainty, the position remains vacant. Moreover, there is currently no Deputy Assistant Secretary for Travel and Tourism in place either. As a result, the National Travel and Tourism Office is led today by an acting Deputy Assistant Secretary, further underscoring the leadership gap in the space. And so it all means that tourism remains a sub-office, although critical to our national economy, remains a sub-office overseen by the Assistant Secretary for Industry and Analysis, position for which you are nominated, rather than by a new Assistant Secretary dedicated solely to focusing on the ecosystem. And it is an ecosystem. It's weather, it's infrastructure, it's workforce, it's broadband. We could go on, but someone who really focuses on this strategy for our economic growth. So Mr. Haynes, fully implementing the Omnibus Travel and Tourism Act, filling these key leadership roles are essential to strengthening our travel and tourism sector, our business sector. So can you speak to the importance of prioritizing travel and tourism, the substantial benefits the tourism industry provides, the economic impact tourism, business travel provides, and how will you support that if confirmed, and until such time we can get an Assistant Secretary for Travel and Tourism?
Thank you, Senator Rosen. I knew I could expect a good, robust travel and tourism question from you in the great state of Nevada.
You lived in Nevada long, so you know how to even say Nevada. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So a lot to unpack there. Well, first, you'll be happy to know that our Deputy Assistant Secretary for Travel and Tourism is going to start in January. Rob O'Leary, he's going to be absolutely excellent. We're excited to have him, and he will be spearheading a lot of the important work that you just highlighted.
Come bring him to our office to meet our team, please.
Yes, ma'am. I would love to have the same invitation as well, if possible.
Yes, absolutely.
I would say three things that I would be focused on to boost travel and tourism. Number one would be to modernize the Survey for International Air Travelers program, which is housed within NTTO. It's currently done by hand. We have only been able to get about 100,000 surveys of international visitors a year, well short of the 1% mandate by this committee. We just put out a competitive bid a few months ago to digitize and automate that, hopefully getting more robust insights into travel and tourism trends and be able to capture a larger data set. And through that, be able to come up with better strategies at a more granular level to attract visitors. The second piece would be we're rolling out a new tool this month, hopefully, and if confirmed, I would love to come talk to you about that. And it is going to be a 50-state travel and tourism competitiveness matrix, to where we currently understand where the United States fits in terms of global travel and tourism competitiveness. This would be able to say, the state of Nevada hypothetically ranks number 9 in attractiveness because they love the gaming, the food, the entertainment. But international visitors thought the weather was bad, the infrastructure, just you name it, and be able to come up with concrete recommendations for every 50 state of how to increase their competitiveness as a travel and tourism destination. This is a program that we're very excited about, would like to roll out far and wide.
I would look forward to collaborating with you on that, because we've been doing a lot of work on it over the last 6 or 7 years, and I have some significant input that might be helpful to you. And I welcome you coming, working with our team to make it as robust as possible, because there's a lot of pieces and parts that go into making places attractive. A lot of it's infrastructure. And so there's a lot to talk about there. So I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am, Senator Rosen. And on the Assistant Secretary piece, obviously, only the President can nominate someone. I will say with the, let's say, bureaucratic minutia, the authorization is well recognized. I know that Secretary Lechnick puts a high value on that. Still would need an appropriation to build it out. I think it's going to be about $3.5 million.
We have appropriated the money in prior budgets.
Currently, our NTTO budget is about $7 million. $6 million of that is SIAT, and at least within the $56 million contract or budget within INA. I don't want to say there's no money in the banana stand, but I think we would be looking to a specific appropriation from CJS to build that out.
Thank you. I see my time is up. I see Senator Capito there. Thank you. Mr. Isaacman, I'll submit my questions on microgravity and other things in all great space for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here. And Mr. Haynes, thank you for your willingness to serve. I think most of my questions are going to go to Mr. Isaacman, but so I didn't want you to take that as a as a slight in any form or fashion. So I have been a strong supporter of the growing West Virginia, we talked about this, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio space economy for many years, and believe that this region, perhaps best known for its energy and infrastructure prowess, has a unique opportunity to emerge as a leader in space energy and infrastructure. So, Mr. Isaacman, as someone who's built successful businesses in Pennsylvania, what role do you see for states like Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio working regionally that can share the space and technology attributes that are not in Texas, Alabama, Florida, California? I'm glad Senator Cruz is not here, in shaping the future of America's space ambitions.
Senator, I really appreciate the question. Certainly, as a resident of Pennsylvania, I'd love nothing more than to see more of our students who graduate go in fields that are relevant to aerospace. But I've said many times, I mean, in order to deliver on NASA's world-changing mission, it's going to require contributions from the best and brightest around the nation. So all those states you mentioned before are certainly incredibly important. They have centers that are located in them that contribute greatly to NASA's mission. But we are going to need an incredibly growing workforce over the years that's going to come from across the nation.
I like the answer, the Keystone Space Collaborative, which is what I was talking about. I think also when you have centers of excellence around and participating in the manufacturing or the technology or innovation, it inspires the next generation. You can have cooperative agreements, internships, and other things to get that next generation. I would note, yesterday I was sent a letter that was sent to the chairman and ranking member where numerous former astronauts spoke in favor of your nomination. I think when you and I spoke before, I spoke about one in particular that I have great admiration for, and I saw her name on the list, Peggy Whitson. So that's good enough for me. She is a remarkable astronaut woman and an inspiration to generations, and she came to West Virginia with me, and our young girls were just awestruck by her. So congratulations on securing that letter. That, I think that goes a long way. I want to talk about IV&V. That is located in the Katherine Johnson it's not in Parkersburg, in Bridgeport, Katherine Johnson IV&V facility. As you know, this does the independent verification and validation. There's always this sort of looming threat that all of this is going to get privatized. I would certainly argue for that facility being very cost-effective, efficient, and the capabilities are tremendous there. I would like to talk to you about this in greater depth when your nomination is positively affirmed by this Senate. By looking to not outsource what they do, but to maybe grow that presence. And so would you be willing to work with me on this?
Absolutely, Senator, and also very, very grateful that a astronaut Hall of Famer like Peggy signed the letter of support. It means so much, along with all the other 35 astronauts who signed it. I'm very interested in taking that visit, ma'am. Because I think in a world that we all envision someday in the future with lots of space stations and deep space missions, the reliance traditionally on mission control and hardware will diminish as we need to have more onboard decision-making and perhaps even the inclusion of AI onto some of our vehicles and even satellites, which will only increase the importance in terms of the integrity of the software. So I think it will obviously have a continuing role to support NASA, but perhaps many other agencies within the government as well.
Good. Yeah, we've been trying to expand that. I would just very quickly, and this is not a short answer kind of question, but as we see the pursuit of our space program and others around the world, the Chinese in particular, to try to get back to the moon, there's a lot of discussion on power generation on the moon. And I don't know what your thoughts are here. I don't know if lunar surface power programs, I know it's talked about nuclear, but also solar. I mean, what are your ideas here, and how far along are we on this?
Senator, so I I love this topic, so I could far exceed our time here. So I want to offer up, I would welcome any opportunity to discuss further, but I'm very big in nuclear in space. I mean, there are numerous applications for it. There's propulsion applications with nuclear electric, nuclear thermal propulsion. There's surface power requirements. We're going to need surface power, for applications that don't have direct sun exposure. We're going to need surface power to likely manufacture propellant for missions to and from Mars, and certainly deeper space exploration missions where there's less solar effectiveness. So it's an area that I think is squarely within NASA's mission to be working on the near impossible, to do what no one else can do and attract the talent that will want to work on exciting mini Manhattan Project-like programs.
Thank you. Thank you both, and thank you both for your willingness to serve.
Thank you, Senator Capito. Let me start with Mr. Haynes. I appreciate we followed the discussions around critical minerals. I want to make sure that we emphasize that's a bipartisan effort. I think the coordination and continuity of programs, there's not a pendulum going back and forth between administrations, focusing on the access to capital, workforce training. We are woefully behind, not just China, but many of our allies in terms of how we find that workforce. So I won't rebuild that or litigate that discussion. Just only want to emphasize it is bipartisan. This is something that should be a high priority. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things, telecommunications, cyberspace, AI, quantum technologies. Colorado has a dense ecosystem there. And I think especially along with AI, quantum it's a field of intense competition between the United States and our rivals, our adversaries. So as our capabilities mature in quantum sensing, quantum communication, computing, obviously, how can we ensure, how can you help ensure that our quantum technologies are only exported to trusted markets?
Thank you for that, Senator, question. Thank you for the question, Senator. I would say the Assistant Secretary for Industry Analysis does not play an active role in export licensing policy. That's our colleagues at the Bureau of Industry and Security, or BIS. I will say that we have and will continue to engage actively with industry to see where those markets exist, and also understand the national security implications of those technologies, where they rack and stack in terms of competitiveness with international competitors. And we could provide that information to the Bureau of Industry Security as they're making their licensing decisions, but we are not actively involved in any export licensing policies or decisions.
Great, I appreciate that. And I think we've got a lot of work to do on there. Mr. Isaacman, we share the same bipartisan goal that the United States should be laser focused on returning American astronauts to the moon, reaching the next frontiers in space exploration. I think I'm still the only scientist in the Senate who's actually provided peer-reviewed papers. Back in May, you answered some of our written questions. I thought this was very well stated, so I repeat it, that you want NASA to be a force multiplier for science, which I think is essential, launching more missions, more telescopes, more probes, more rovers. You also said that you can be expected to be a passionate advocate for science. All of NASA's science and exploration missions, including both planetary and earth sciences, prioritizing these efforts is not about choosing one over the other, but rather identifying where the greatest breakthroughs are possible. Certainly now you're dealing with a budget issue that's fairly dramatic. So I wanted to see how you balance that. Can you confirm, where you believe NASA's scientific and exploration missions, are they complementary, or do they end up becoming, because of budget issues, mutually exclusive?
Well, Senator, first, I think the scientific side of NASA is just as important as human exploration, as is our work in aeronautics and technology development. I think that, as I mentioned to some of the other senators before, I understand earlier this year we had a presidential budget request. Of course, I do absolutely support the president in the goal of reducing the deficit and ensuring the nation's on good footing. But that said, a lot has changed since then. I mean, and this is something that if I am confirmed, I'd love to get my arms around because we have been on a continuing resolution. I mean, earlier this year, I understood that perhaps even the Nancy Grace Roman telescope might launch under initial budget requests. I've since been informed that that is no longer the case. So simply put, Senator, I'd love to know where we stand today. But as I've told other senators, you know, in terms of dollars allocated from Congress, we will absolutely maximize the scientific value of every one of them.
Sure, I appreciate that. And the Nancy Grace Roman telescope is a good example. Is Goddard Space Flight Center in a similar position in terms, I know that they're looking at certain potentially draconian changes to their budget?
I mean, Senator, I'm nothing more than I would read the same things that other people do. If you ask me, I think Goddard is very important to spearheading the scientific efforts of NASA.
Right, great. We agree. I appreciate that, and I do recognize is the difficult choices that tight budgets create for all of you, and appreciate that. I'm out of time, even though now I'm left to be the chair. I think the compulsion is that I have to curtail my questions, but I have a couple more questions I'm going to submit in writing to you guys. And again, I appreciate both of your willingness to serve the country in these roles. So Mr. Isaacman and Mr. Haynes, my last question, which I am not just allowed but required to ask of all nominees, if confirmed, do you pledge to work collaboratively with this committee to provide thorough and timely responses to this committee's requests and to appear before the committee when requested?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator. I don't think NASA can accomplish its world-changing mission without the support of Congress.
Right. Well, I think it has to be a close partnership, especially all the more so in these days of tight budgets. So thank you. I have literally dozens of letters of support from various organizations for both of your nominations. And we ask unanimous consent these letters be inserted into the hearing record without objection, so ordered. It's hard to have any objections when you control the room. Senators will have until the close of business on December 4th to submit additional questions for the record. The nominees will have until 11 a.m. on December 7th to respond to those questions. That's a pretty quick turnaround, but hopefully that doesn't put you in too difficult a position. That will conclude today's hearing. The committee stands adjourned.
office, from supporting my role as ranking member of the Banking National Security Subcommittee that covers export controls and CFIUS work, to State Department reauthorization and consular issues on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to the important work of funding the government through the appropriations process. Frankly, there wasn't much that Stephen didn't touch in my office. Before his time in the Senate, Stephen served as a Presidential Management Fellow, then as a Foreign Affairs Officer at the Department of State's Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs. Stephen's a graduate of the University of Nevada and holds a master's in Asian Studies from the George Washington University Elliott School of International Affairs. Stephen's understanding of how federal agencies operate and his deep knowledge of foreign policy and national security were evident from the first day he joined my team. This expertise served the constituents of Tennessee remarkably well, and his love for this country and serving the American people is palpable. He's a man of conviction, a man of loyalty and integrity, and precisely the caliber of person we need serving in government. I thank you for considering Stephen's nomination, and I encourage my colleagues to support his nomination as he advances his call to public service. Congratulations, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hagerty. I will now turn to our colleague, Senator Sheehy, to introduce Mr. Isaacman. Senator Sheehy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome back, Jared. I'd say this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but I think we're on number 2 now. So, Monica, great to see you. Thanks for bringing the girls. Before I introduce Jared, Chairman, I'd like to enter in 40 letters of support for Mr. Isaacman's nomination, please.
Without objection.
Thank you. For nearly 70 years, the United States has been at the forefront of space exploration. President Trump knows how critical it is for our country to lead the way yet again as our space program aims to reach new heights, and that's why he chose exactly the right man for the job, Jared Isaacman. I've personally known Jared for several years, sharing an aviation community in Montana and cooperating with him on improving the education experience for our next generation of explorers, astronauts, engineers, NASA administrators at Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama. Of note, both Jared and I attended Space Camp, and although I would say it lit a spark in both of us to chase the dream of aviation and aerospace, he's been far more successful than I have. We both dreamed of being astronauts as children. The difference is Jared actually is one, whereas I had settled for the title of senator. We both dreamed of being astronauts as children. America's been the leader of global space travel for generations, pushing the boundaries of space and testing the limits of human endurance and intellect. All Americans should be deeply proud of the incredible accomplishments of heroes like Alan Shepard, John Glenn, Neil Armstrong, Jim Lovell, and many others. The sacrifice and leadership of these brave astronauts is what most Americans know. What they usually don't know is that behind each and every one of these explorers is a massive team of dedicated engineers, program managers, innovators, test pilots, welders, electricians, truck drivers, and families who are the true heroes of our space program. To lead this incredible team requires a leader who not only understands and believes in the mission, but has the interdisciplinary skill set to coordinate these cross-functional teams to achieve critical outcomes. Since the tragedy of the Columbia disaster in 2003, NASA has been an organization of great people searching for revival. And after the cancellation of the shuttle program for 10 years, it's important to remember, for 10 years, the United States was paying Russia taxi fare to send our own astronauts into space. This would make John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, and dozens of other American leaders turn in their grave. And in light of the recent Starliner mission to the ISS that left astronauts stuck in space for almost 9 months, we were reminded that much work remains. President Trump knew it was time for a change, and he chose the right man for the job. Despite Jared's desire to be an Air Force fighter pilot and astronaut as a child, he found out that he was smarter than most and started a disruptive software company in his garage as a teenager. That company grew to be a tremendous multi-billion-dollar success, and that success fueled his ascension in the Hall of Fame as a record-setting jet pilot, an aggressor pilot for Air Force fighter pilots, and most recently, this first civilian ever to conduct a spacewalk. On top of all that, Jared and I share another passion, pediatric philanthropy. Jared has personally donated millions to improve health care for at-risk children all over America, yet again underlining his commitment to this great nation. NASA is a point of great pride for our nation. It has carved out new frontiers for mankind and shown the world the power of freedom. China is progressing at a breakneck pace to overtake our space infrastructure and beat us back to the moon, and they fully intend to win. If we don't focus our efforts and commit to victory now, we will find ourselves going to bed under the glow of a red moon. We have a moral obligation to continue to lead on the greatest frontier ever known, and it requires strong leadership. Jared is an articulate leader, a great father and husband, and one of the smartest people in America. Jared understands not only how to manage a complex, multi-billion-dollar organization, but how to design and engineer critical systems. And to top it off, he knows how to fly spaceships. NASA is in need of spiritual rejuvenation, and that will take fresh leadership. Jared is the perfect man for the job, and I look forward to adding NASA Administrator to his already remarkable resume. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sheehy. I will now recognize Mr. Isaacman for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, Senator Sheehy for that very generous introduction, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm honored and grateful to be here before you again as President Donald Trump's nominee to lead the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge my family. So my parents, Sandy and Don Isaacman, behind me, my wife, Monica, my two wonderful daughters, Mila and Liv. So over the years, I've found many ways to challenge their patience, and politics is certainly no exception. We are also joined today by 7 astronauts, some of my closest friends and crewmates, together with NASA astronauts that have come to this hearing in support. Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge and appreciate that Senator Britt from the state of Alabama is here today, so not only home to Marshall Spaceflight Center, but also to Space Camp, which is where my journey began. As mentioned before, I have lived the American dream. I've been fortunate to have an amazing business and aeronautics career, to have led 2 notable missions to space, to help charitable causes that matter deeply to my family. And now I'm beyond thankful for a chance to repay my debt to this nation by serving alongside the brilliant minds at the world's most accomplished space agency. The last time I sat before you, I introduced myself, my qualifications, and the challenges and opportunities ahead. This time, I'm here with a message of urgency. After more than a half-century, America is set to launch NASA astronauts around the moon in just a matter of months. This is a challenging endeavor, to say the least, and one that requires full-time leadership. Secretary Duffy, in his letter to this committee endorsing my nomination, emphasized this point. The message is shared by more than 4 dozen other letters of support, including an online petition started by members of the NASA workforce and a letter from 36 NASA astronauts who, like me, have sat through anomaly investigations, launch and flight readiness reviews, and have accepted the risks of going to space and understand what is at stake. And I know it's not lost on anyone in this room that we are in a great competition with a rival that has the will and the means to challenge American exceptionalism across multiple domains, including in the high ground of space. This is not the time for delay, but a time for action. Because if we fall behind, if we make a mistake, we may never catch up, and the consequences could shift the balance of power here on Earth. This Congress, and specifically this committee, understand the urgency of the moment, placing a historic investment in human space exploration that President Trump signed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's now time for NASA and its partners to deliver. To that end, I want to assure you, senators, I'm not here for personal gain, to favor or enrich contractors, to close centers, or disrupt programs that are essential to completing America's objectives in space. If confirmed, I'm here to bring urgency and an extreme focus to the mission, to do all I can working with the best and brightest at NASA to lead humanity's efforts to unlock the secrets of the universe and ensure American leadership across the last great frontier. In concert with that grand endeavor, we will ensure the following: the success of the Artemis program that President Trump began during his first term. America will return to the moon before our great rival, and we will establish an enduring presence to understand and realize the scientific, economic, and national security value on the lunar surface. Along the way, we will pioneer the next giant leap in capabilities to extend America's reach even further into space, including expanding and accelerating investments into nuclear propulsion, both nuclear electric and nuclear thermal, and surface power programs. These efforts, in addition to industry partners building reusable launch vehicles, will set the stage for future missions to Mars and beyond. We will never accept a gap in capabilities again, not with our space station presence in low Earth orbit or our ability to send American astronauts to the moon. We will strive to build an orbital and lunar economy that can fund the future we all want to see in space someday and not rely exclusively on the taxpayer. We will begin making the investments now for the inevitable spacefaring future that is just on the horizon. We will make the most efficient use of every dollar allocated, pushing for more X-planes, more rovers and telescopes, more exciting missions like Hubble, James Webb, and Dragonfly, with the aim of enlightening the world through breakthrough scientific discoveries, knowing that if NASA doesn't do it, no one else will. Some of the most talented people in America show up to work at NASA. Alongside a reinvigorated culture and an intense focus on achieving the near impossible, what no other organization is capable of or even dares to accomplish, we will achieve these objectives. And when, not if, we get the job done, it will be because of the professionals at NASA, our international and our commercial partners, this committee in Congress, and President Trump's administration that will have succeeded in ushering in a new golden age of science and discovery. We'll do it for America, for humankind, and in doing so, we will inspire the world and generations to follow to take us even farther. We are just getting started on the greatest adventure in human history, and with urgency and purpose and extreme focus on the mission, NASA will lead the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Isaacman. And now I recognize Mr. Haynes for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. And here I was thinking that all the fanfare outside was for industry and analysis, but not the first time I've had my bubble burst. Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, distinguished members of the committee, it's an honor to be with you here today. I'd like to thank President Trump, Secretary Lutnick, and Undersecretary William Kimmett for putting their confidence in me to serve as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Industry and Analysis. I'd also like to extend my deepest gratitude to Senator Hagerty for introducing me today. I feel incredibly fortunate to have his mentorship and support. It's also an honor to have several of my family members here with me, starting with my incredible wife, Erica Haynes, who's sitting behind me. Our first year of marriage, she asked me what I wanted to do with my life career-wise, and I thought I gave her the right answer, which was to be a good dad, to be a good husband, and she gently reminded me that that was the bare minimum and challenged me to aim higher. And her continual love and support over the past 10 years of marriage has challenged me to do just that. Our first son, Henry, is here as well. It's the honor of my life to be his dad and to have him by my side. His little brother, Oscar, has been on the planet for a total of 10 weeks. And so he decided to forego the hearing, stay home with his grandmother, probably taking a nap right now. My father-in-law, Guy Dietrich, is here from Washington State. Thank you for being here, as well as one of my 3 older sisters, Heather Prey, and her husband and my best friend, Charlie Prey. My parents, Paul and Christy, were unable to make the trip to Washington, D.C. today, but they're proudly watching from home in Franklin, Tennessee. I inherited a tenacious work ethic and a drive for excellence from my father and a sense of faith and conviction from my mother. They shaped me into the man I am today, and there's no way I could ever repay them for that. I grew up in Franklin, Tennessee in the 90s at the height of Pax Americana. I distinctly remember driving home from school with my mom and her telling me that we lived in the greatest country in the world. And even at a young age, I was filled with a sense of pride and excitement and expectation for the future. I truly felt lucky to be an American. And I carried that pride with me as I left America to study abroad and then start a career in the oil and gas industry in Asia. No matter where I went, who I met, what I did, I always carried that sense that there was no place like home, my home, the United States of America. And then in the early 2010s, I started to notice a shift, like a lot of people, in the global geopolitical and economic landscape. And for the first time in my life, America's future felt uncertain and not guaranteed. And so through the loving encouragement of my wife, who's from the area, decided to move to Washington, D.C., leave the private sector, and pursue a career in foreign policy and national security via public service. And that journey has led me to multiple roles at the Department of State, the Pentagon, here in the United States Senate, and now for the second time at the Department of Commerce. The colleagues that I've worked with, along with the experiences that I've gained, have all somehow culminated in the necessary preparation for this specific nomination. For 6 months prior to this nomination, I had the privilege of performing the duties of the Assistant Secretary for Industry and Analysis, learning its policies, its people, portfolios, budget, contracts, learning every facet of the organization. And it's because of that I feel a sense of pride and excitement to have the opportunity to lead the organization in an official capacity. And if confirmed, my singular focus will be supporting American industry's competitiveness through robust understanding of analysis of sectors and supply chains, improving and growing INA's analytical capabilities to better respond to trade questions facing U.S. policymakers, and empowering the professionals, the people who work at INA to approach their work with a sense of subject matter expertise, mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And to that end, I look forward to working constructively with this committee. Thank you for your time and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Congratulations on both your nominations. And I will say, Mr. Haynes, your 10-week-old son would have certainly been welcome here this morning. With some frequency, senators have been known to cry and sleep fitfully, and so he would have fit well in this body. Mr. Isaacman, welcome back. As you know, NASA's human spaceflight program, and its Artemis in particular, is critical to maintaining U.S. leadership in space. But as I think you can appreciate, spaceflight comes at a significant cost. Its success requires program stability. The United States can't dominate in space if our commitments change wildly from one administration to the next or from one appropriation process to the next. That's why the NASA section of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which I authored, outlines a stable path forward for the agency. It gives clear guidance on the Artemis moon mission. It paves the way for commercial space stations in low Earth orbit, and it invests in NASA's infrastructure to be able to execute its exploration missions. Will you commit to this committee and to the Senate to full and timely compliance with the law's requirements if you're confirmed?
Yes, Senator, I do.
Let's dive into those requirements. Congress wrote into the One Big Beautiful Bill that there shall be a stable, fully funded path for Artemis, at least through Artemis 5. Congress also dedicated money for the Gateway Lunar Orbit Space Station and the Orion crew capsule. Artemis is the key, I believe, to both beating China to the lunar surface and to maintaining a U.S. presence at the moon. What concrete steps will you take to maintain the Artemis program's long-term stability?
Senator, I appreciate the question, and similar to my previous hearing, I absolutely believe that the current architecture with SLS is the fastest path to achieving our near-term lunar objectives, which should be to return to the moon before our great rival and establish the infrastructure so that we can realize the scientific, economic, and national security value. Now, we have the first mission, which is approaching in just a matter of months, which is Artemis 2, where we will fly around the moon. The next mission, Artemis 3, we're going to land astronauts on the moon. There's a lot that has to happen in between Artemis 2 and 3. So in that respect, I am grateful that the One Big Beautiful Bill affords us the opportunity of additional heavy launch vehicles through Artemis 4 and 5. Now, in order for, with respect to the continuity of the mission, Senator, in order for us to actually land the astronauts on the moon, it will mean that one, or ideally two, commercial partners will have pioneered reusable heavy launch lift capabilities and orbital propellant transfer to get the lander to the lunar environment. And when we see American astronauts walk on the moon again, it means one or both of them were successful. So in doing so, after completing the Artemis 5 mission, which is already contemplated in the One Big Beautiful Bill, we should have numerous options available to us to have routine and affordable missions to the lunar surface for continuity beyond Artemis 5.
It's also part of U.S. law that it is American policy to have sustained human habitation either on the moon or in cislunar orbit. Do you agree with that objective, and do you commit to doing everything humanly possible to achieving it?
I do, Senator. I think the President of the United States would be very excited to see a lunar base.
And I will say, just a minute ago, you talked about competing providers. I want to be very clear. I have no particular interest in one provider versus another. My interest is in making sure the objective is achieved. And at times, some have suggested that the objective of going to the moon and the objective of going to Mars are in tension. I don't believe they're in tension. I believe both are critical. America will be the first to land on Mars. That is critically important. That is written into law, and I was proud to author that provision in law. But I also think at the same time we cannot lose the moon and lose the race to the moon to China. Do you agree that both are critical priorities?
I do, Senator. And again, consistent with my prior testimony before this committee, there actually are parallel efforts underway. Now there is no question the overwhelming near-term priority is to return American astronauts to the moon and, again, establish an enduring presence on what is a very scarce piece of real estate that we're interested in at this time. But as I mentioned before, in order for those American astronauts to step foot off a lander onto the lunar surface, it means one or both, and actually potentially many more commercial providers will have pioneered reusable heavy lift launch capabilities and on-orbit prop transfer, which is the same capability, really the next giant leap capability that America needs for missions to the moon, Mars, and beyond.
The International Space Station, which is managed from Texas's Johnson Space Center, is scheduled to be retired by 2030. It will be replaced by one or more commercially developed stations, partially funded by NASA and partially by private partners. Congress has been clear that a gap in our presence in low Earth orbit would jeopardize U.S. strategic interests. Will you commit to guaranteeing a continuous human presence in low Earth orbit and a continuous American presence during your tenure, and to ensure that there is no gap between the retirement of the ISS and the transition to commercial LEO destinations?
I absolutely commit to that, Senator. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, we can never accept a gap in our capabilities again, not in low Earth orbit or our ability to reach the moon. I, like a lot of space enthusiasts, dream of the day where we have multiple commercial space stations in low Earth orbit. But I think in order for that to be a financially viable model, we have to absolutely maximize the remaining life of the International Space Station, get the highest potential science and research to the space station to crack the code on the orbital economy to give all these commercial space stations a fighting chance.
Thank you. Senator Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I had to step out for a minute and take a call from another member, but I just want to make sure I heard everything you just said correctly on this. So when Secretary Duffy, as the acting, announced NASA would reopen to compete Artemis 3 human lander to ensure America would reach the lunar surface in 2028, you agree with that decision, and will you fully commit to this recompetition?
Well, Senator, I mean, both SpaceX and Blue Origin were already awarded contracts through a competitive process to build the lander, and I don't think it was lost on either one of those organizations that the first company that is capable of delivering a lander to take American astronauts to the lunar surface and back is the one that this nation is going to go with. I think that competition is fantastic. I think the best thing for SpaceX is a Blue Origin right on their heels and vice versa.
Great. Well, we're glad they recompeted, and when I first became ranking member of the committee, we argued for the redundancy of competition. There's nothing like competition to get the product that we need. And I think the decision that was made was based on the urgency to return by 2028. So you believe in that process?
Senator, I absolutely agree with competition. I think we need competition for the vendors that support NASA's critical mission. I think competition among world powers is actually a really good thing, just as long as we don't lose.
Okay. The R&D issue about high-rate composites, I mentioned in my opening statement, the HiCam project, which does have NASA's support in trying to generate more composites. We have, with Idaho, established a tech hub in thermoplastics, and really believe that the United States should not lose this race for high-rate composite manufacturing. Will you fight to keep for NASA's aeronautic budget to sufficiently fund such HiCam operations and support the technology development that is needed for aerospace materials?
Senator, I think it's squarely in the responsibility of the aeronautics portion of NASA to work on the absolute cutting-edge materials that will ensure the competitiveness of our aeronautics industry well into the future.
Okay, and then how can you further leverage NASA's university work for development and research?
I think, I mean, there's a couple parts to that, Senator. First, I think in general, it's part of NASA's responsibility towards inspiration in STEM education to award grants to academic institutions that give students hands-on opportunities with hardware, ideally inspire them to want to graduate and either work at NASA or contribute to industry. Also, I just think it's a great way to, crack the code on important research that's going to bubble up towards NASA achieving its important objectives.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Haynes, how do we get this supply chain onshoring or supply chain materials similar to this same subject? One of the reasons I became interested in the Tech Hub is actually an Idaho employer came to me and said, "Do you understand the Europeans are trying to buy us?" And I was like, "No, I didn't understand that." And he said, "Yes, everybody's looking for the best technology, and they see it in our country, and they want to buy it, and we're not doing it and creating the supply chain." So, how do you think this job and role you can help improve supply chain identifications for America's competitiveness, particularly in manufacturing?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. One word simply is mapping. We're doing this across a wide variety of sectors. Critical minerals, one. Mine to market is a term that we use often. We have to understand the supply chain, understand where their choke points are, if any. There's two components with it: industry analysis that do supply chain analysis, the Trade Policy Analysis or TP&A division, as well as the Supply Chain Center. There's a good amount of overlap there. If confirmed, one of my sole focuses is going to be to supercharge our analytic capabilities, bring some in-house, currently out-of-house tools in-house to be able to answer specific questions just like that, and be able to have a little bit more ball control in terms of mapping and analyzing supply chains.
And do you look at this issue as a true competition issue with China and other countries to make sure that we are mapping these supply chains?
It absolutely is. It's a competitive issue across the board. I would say yes, Senator.
Okay, and then there is a legislation sponsored by myself, Blackburn, Blunt, Rochester, and Young on promoting resilient supply chain. Will you look at that and tell us whether you can support that legislation?
I have looked at it. We provided initial TA, and if passed, I'd be happy to implement it to the fullest extent and work with the committee to do so.
Do you see any problems with it now?
I would have to read the bill over again. The current text is escaping me, but I'm happy to do that. And
For the
get back
record,
to
that
you.
would be great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Moran.
Chairman, thank you. Thank you and Senator Cantwell for exhibiting greater speed than the normal Senate process in having this hearing, in hopes that...
I'm pretty sure glaciers move at greater speed.
We share that view, Mr. Chairman, and nice to see that this committee is moving forward in regard to consideration of confirmation of a new NASA administrator. And I look forward to his confirmation and look forward to the Senate considering it, his approval in this committee and the Senate approving it presumably next week. Mr. Isaacman, let me start with you. My intended questions changed a bit because I received a letter this week from a Kansas farmer. And it captured my attention because I certainly share the views of Senator Cantwell and Senator Cruz in regard to the moon and Mars, and that's, I suppose, what nationally the public thinks about NASA is that we're on our way to some object in space and we're exploring space. But NASA has lots of roles. You've talked about STEM education being one of them. I want to mention for a moment the Mission Directive of Science. And the letter that captured me is from a Kansas farmer named Mr. Roth, and he indicates to me that NASA's Earth science investments, I'm reading from his letter, now directly support U.S. farmers in ways that were unimaginable even a decade ago. Tools based on NASA's data and science like OpenET, NISAR, the Rangeland Analysis Platform provide real-time, field-level insight into soil moisture, biomass, drought stress, water use, yield stability. These aren't future technologies, he says. They are already built, functional, and being used in states like mine today. He mentions FIAT is a national farmer science partnership that brings early development producers together with NASA researchers to co-develop practical on-farm tools using satellite data. This mission is to unite farmers with NASA to turn Earth observation technology into real-world decisions that support profitability, water efficiency, and risk reduction. Kansas farmer found value in NASA. It's something that we don't always talk about and think about when we think about space. I'm looking for your thoughts in response to what this farmer is reminding me of. How do you see NASA supporting or operationally developing the satellites that support precision agriculture? Tell me your response to this idea that NASA has a role to play in the everyday lives of Kansas and American agriculture.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I mean, at the present time, we only inhabit one planet, and Earth science is pretty vitally important. It's a role that NASA has had since the agency was established. We have Landsat satellites up there that are looking down, understanding droughts and flooding and wildfires, natural disasters, just almost essentially in real time that obviously play a direct role on the agriculture community. There's obviously our GPS constellations that are, going to go hand in hand with agriculture equipment for next generation farming. So I do see this as a vital role that NASA continues to fulfill.
I thank you for that statement, that commitment. I'm pleased to be a member of this committee, and I chair the subcommittee on aviation and space, but I also serve as the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee that funds NASA as well as the Department of Commerce. And Mr. Isaacman, have you had a chance to look at our budget, our appropriations bill, in any response to what our committee has approved and what we expect to be on the Senate floor in the next 2 weeks?
Well, Senator, I don't think I can really comment on any pending legislation other than to say that we will absolutely maximize every dollar Congress affords to the agency.
Would you expand that commitment to say that you will execute the funding that we provide to NASA in this legislation as it's intended to be spent?
Senator, I will always follow the law, sir.
Thank you. I would also use this opportunity to indicate that upon our success in bringing the Commerce, Justice, Science bill to the Senate floor, I encourage all my colleagues who are so excited about space exploration and going to the moon and going to Mars, and maybe who have an interest in agriculture and earth sciences, I would encourage them to actually vote for the appropriation bill so that we can, in addition to authorizing and confirming personnel, we can actually accomplish the goals that this committee is spending time this morning highlighting. Let me ask about another aspect. I have 14 seconds. Let me ask a question in fairness so that the gentleman from Tennessee is not ignored. It a bit follows the question of Senator Cantwell, and that is making sure that using ITA not only as a trade remedy for export promotion, but to be a proactive partner in shaping industrial policy, improving supply chain resiliency, and strengthening U.S. competitiveness. Tell me that you believe that's a significant component of what your job is and will be.
Thank you, Senator. That is the core component of the job.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moran. And Senator Kim has very kindly agreed to allow Senator Moreno to skip in front of him in line since Senator Moreno has to preside on the Senate floor. So thank you, Senator Kim, and I recognize Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Senator Kim, and that doesn't mean I'm going to be less harsh on you in the pickleball court. But thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mrs. Isaacman, for putting up with this double take process. I'm sure having a great supportive spouse has been critical in your life like it's been for mine. Mr. Isaacman, as the administration looks to accelerate Golden Dome and strengthen national security space capabilities, how do you see NASA and the U.S. Space Force better coordinating their work in power, propulsion, communications, and hypersonic missile testing, especially given the unique test environments at places like Armstrong Test Facility to avoid duplication and move faster?
Thank you for the question, Senator. So clearly NASA's job is the peaceful exploration of air and space. It's also not lost on us that this is a domain that is of great strategic importance. And I do think in a fiscally constrained environment it is important that we are not having duplicate infrastructure or various bespoke programs when we could have a more unified approach to it. So you know, for example, a lot of the work that is done both at Glenn and Marshall Spaceflight Center with nuclear has applications for peaceful exploration of space, surface power programs, but also Department of War implications. And I'd hope that we could collaborate, at least with some of our counterparts in other agencies, again, to avoid any duplicative spending or inefficient application of resources.
That's right. Speaking of nuclear, at NASA Glenn Research Center, we're leading the development of a 100-kilowatt lunar fission reactor. How should NASA build on this leadership in nuclear power and propulsion to ensure that the U.S. stays ahead in returning to the moon and reaching Mars?
Well, Senator, I love that question. I think NASA is funded by the taxpayers to do the near impossible. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, what no other agency or organization or even company is capable of doing or dares to do. I think NASA should be evolving to work on grand, almost mini Manhattan Project nuclear programs that have the benefit for surface power applications, especially when you're out of sunlight or you're undertaking discovery missions, let's say past Mars, for example, or even actually on the surface of Mars for manufacturing propellant. So I think there is this working, whether it's on nuclear electric propulsion, nuclear thermal propulsion, surface power programs, there is a ton of applications that NASA should be working on in that regard. And when NASA does work